I grew up on the main streets of Laguna Beach, California. And to say that I had a privileged upbringing would be the understatement of the year. I grew up in one of the most beautiful places in the world, especially in the 60s and the 70s. And at the age of 4, I picked up a tennis racket. And by the time I was 12, I was ranked nationally as a junior tennis player. But I was also a sensitive, angry, impulsive kid, which sometimes came onto the tennis court with me. And I would smash rackets and throw rackets and yell at people. And I earned the nickname on the little circuit tour of Little McEnroe, which I sort of liked and sort of didn't. So, dang, I just lost my spot.
You're doing good.
I know, I'm doing good. All right.
You know where you are? I do.
I do. I'm in Portland.
Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. Give me a word.
You turned 14.
I turned 14, yes. Okay, all right. So, at the age of 14, I was so fed up with tennis that I quit. I hated it. It wasn't bringing me any solace anymore. I just didn't see the point. And I started hanging out at the beach with my friends who looked like they were having a much more laid-back lifestyle than I was having up to that point. Smoking pot, drinking, hanging out with girls, and occasionally making poor life choices. And so you can probably tell by now that I was not valedictorian in my high school. And when I graduated from high school, shortly after, I took a check out of my dad's checkbook and I wrote it to my cocaine dealer. And, you know, what 18-year-old kid has a cocaine dealer? That was me. And I knew that my dad was going to find this out, obviously, and so he set me down and he said, Stephen, he always called me by my full name when I was in trouble, I'm going to give you 2 choices. You can join the military, like your Uncle John did, seemed to help him out quite a bit, or I'm going to press charges for you stealing a check and for forgery. So I joined the Navy. And I really had an expectation that maybe it would help me like it helped my Uncle John. But I'll tell you 2 things about my childhood that will give you a good indication of how my naval career went. I quit the Boy Scouts because I hated wearing the uniform. And I hated to be told what to do. So things went pretty well for a while. But I found it hard to run away from my true self. But I also found that it's not that hard to run away from the Navy if you're willing to pay the consequences. And so that's what I did. At the age of 21, I went AWOL for the 3rd time. And this time I was gone for 6 months. I look back at this as my big journey in life, these 6 months, that took me from San Diego to Dallas to Tennessee, down to Florida, up to Virginia Beach. And I would stay with people that I had met in the Navy. And I would tell them, yeah, I got an honorable discharge from the Navy, everything's cool, I'm just driving around the country trying to figure out who I am, which is all a lie. I was lying to everybody. I was trying to survive for 6 months. And when I left Virginia Beach, I decided that I was going to go turn myself in, because living with that kind of a lie is just, I mean, there were times that I just wanted to scream out loud to somebody, I'm AWOL! Like, just to get it out of me, you know, because of a disease. So I was heading back to San Diego, and unfortunately for me, I ran out of lies and money in El Paso, Texas. And I'm sure there's a country music song in there somewhere. So I turned myself in, and here's the craziness of the military. So they bought me a plane ticket to Seattle, Washington, because my ship was in dry dock up in Seattle. And they put me on the plane, and they let me go by myself. And like 2 days ago, I just turned myself in because I was gone for 185 days. And now you're just going to let me fly to Seattle by myself. So I'd be lying to you if I didn't think, I get to SeaTac Airport, I can just walk right out the door and continue my journey. But I was so exhausted. I was just so tired. And I was ready to pay the consequences at this point. When I got to the ship, they took me to the ship's office and they filed formal charges. And that was that they were going to court-martial me. And court-martial is as scary as it sounds. It's a criminal court for the military. And the trial took just about 2 days. And when the judge asked me to stand for sentencing, I pushed myself back on the table and my legs wouldn't work. I mean, it's the most scared I've ever been in my life. Especially since my attorney told me before the trial started that I could get up to 5 years in military prison for this. And I stood up, and the judge looked at me and says, Petty Officer Eggerts, you're a disgrace to that uniform, and there's no place for you in my military. And I thought, this isn't going so well. But I also thought, he's right. I was a disgrace to that uniform, and I didn't belong in the military. I sentence you to 30 days in the brig, an immediate discharge upon completion of your time served, and you'll get a dishonorable discharge which is going to follow you around for the rest of your life. And as they put the handcuffs on me, my attorney leaned in and said, you got really lucky. And as they were escorting me out of the courtroom, I thought to myself, I think I did get a little lucky. So I did my time at Fort Lewis in Washington, and when the ship came to pick me up after 30 days to take me back, I had a little bit of excitement. I thought that this whole thing was about to be over. I was going to walk back on the ship, and they were going to hand me my discharge papers, and I'd be on my way and start my life over. And when I got back to the ship, they took me into the captain's quarters, which I have sat in front of a lot of vice principals and principals in my life going in high school, and this is like 100 times scarier, you know. And so I thought he was going to come in and give me some fatherly lecture about how I screwed up my life and, you know, good luck to you. But I quickly realized that the word immediate to the Navy means something completely different than Webster's definition. And I was restricted to the ship until my discharge paper showed up from Washington, D.C. And this was in 1986, where they snail mailed everything. 6 weeks went by, and I was still on the ship. And then they made the announcement that they're going back to San Diego. And I don't want to go back to San Diego. Mostly because going back to San Diego means at least 2 months out to sea. It doesn't matter if my discharge papers show up then because I'm in the middle of the ocean. And being on that ship of 270 crew members, I was the only one on the ship that had been officially kicked out of the Navy but wasn't allowed to leave. And it was lonely. I got what I deserved, but it was lonely. So they were leaving in 10 days. So I had to come up with a different plan if my discharge paper weren't there. Day 9, I grab an empty trash bag and I go and I fill it up with as much of my personal belongings as I can. I grab a real bag of trash and I'm allowed to leave the ship to take the trash off. And so I'm heading towards the quarterdeck. And my right side of my brain is saying, no, don't do this. Because when you get caught, you will definitely serve a lot of time in the brig. And my left side of the brain, which is the more immature side, is like, screw it, just go. Come on, you got to get off this ship. I walked up to the quarterdeck. I asked for permission to leave, and it felt like an eternity when he said, you have permission. And I walked down the gangplank, which is super loud, clanky, and I got down to the dock. I walked over the trash receptacles, threw the bag of trash in, threw my uniform in, changed into civilian clothes, and I walked off the base. I didn't have much of a plan after that. I didn't think this through. So I kind of knew this woman in Portland. So I called her and said I was going to be flying down, and would you pick me up at the airport? And she said, sure, yeah. So I get down there the next day, and she no-shows me. And I am certain she's the smartest woman I met at that point. Because in the next 2 weeks, I blew through what little money I had and got arrested for the first time in my life. And if there's a silver lining from being arrested, there was one for me, because that's how I found out that the Navy had officially discharged me. There was no warrant out for my arrest. So I was free. However, I was homeless, penniless, and for the first time in my life, I was suicidal. And I had but one choice, and that was to call my dad, who is literally the last person I wanted to call at that moment. I put a dime in the phone and called, and I said, Dad, my life sucks. I'm homeless, penniless, I'm suicidal. I'm in Portland, Oregon on 82nd and Sandy. Not that that meant anything to him. But nothing good happens on 82nd and Sandy. And if you could just send me $500, I'm sure I can get my shit together and get my life back on track. And there was a long pause, and he says, Stephen, we're not sending you any more money. But I do have a question for you. And I want you to think about this before you answer me. Do you think there's a possibility that the reason you are where you are in your life right now might be because of drugs and alcohol? I thought about it. No, I said. That's stupid. Like, I could not connect the dots. But within 2 hours, I was at Hooper Detox, waiting for a treatment bed to open up for the first time in my life. Thanks.